You could be working on a very important case dealing with national security issues, but if it's not of importance to the priorities of the government at the time, you can see those types of investigations being down-tooled. I am Neil Bisson. I'm a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and I'm currently the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network. I found one of the hardest things to deal with is the fact that you have to live a double life. Friends and family who have an understanding of what you do are always concerned about what's going on because you're out there talking to individuals who are going to provide you information about terrorists and foreign spies and foreign influence and saboteurs. All of these things are potentially dangerous situations. Doesn't matter who you're talking to. If it gets back to the wrong people, you could be in jeopardy. And so could the people that you care about. When you're hired as an intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, you're kind of wearing two hats simultaneously. You're an investigator and you're an analyst, which basically means that you're out collecting that information, whoever you're talking to, and then you're going back to try to corroborate that information, to try to expand on it, to try to identify individuals who someone might have mentioned to you that may be involved in some national security threat activity. In a way, it is much more involved than a lot of other intelligence organizations because a lot of other intelligence organizations, they have collectors and then they have analysts. The service focus is more on you being a generalist. They want you to have that ability to go out there and basically talk to anyone about anything. And at the same time, you have to have a meticulous nature that makes sure that you check all the boxes, cross all the T's, dot all the I's to make sure the information that you're providing is as accurate as possible.
So walk me through the process of recruiting a source.
Well, the first step in recruiting a source is always understanding what the target is. If you think of it almost like a dartboard or a bullseye. So you have the target that's in the center, and then you have these concentric rings going out. And each one of those concentric rings could be how that target communicates, who they associate with, where they work. So you look at that, and then you try to identify, okay, well, who could I potentially have access to that would have access to the target? And once you've identified whether it's a person, whether it's a company, whether it's an organization, then you go out and you try to find somebody in that organization, or you speak to someone who knows the target. You have to be very careful when you're doing this because you don't want word to get back to the target necessarily, because if that happens, you're risking the fact that that individual or that group now becomes aware of your interest. And that might have an effect on your ability to monitor their activities.
If you're approaching a potential source and you want to make sure that the target doesn't find out, what are some strategies you can use?
There are ways and means. I mean, the service is fortunate enough that when they put up warrants through the court system, they have the ability to monitor certain communications, or they have the ability to potentially see the interactions of that individual. One example would be, I would set up a meeting with someone in a public venue, and after that meeting, we may set up surveillance to see if that individual has made contact with the target. Or we may be up on some technicals. Maybe we're aware of their internet traffic. Maybe we're aware of the phone calls that they're making. Even an established source might get to the point that they have contact with the target and don't tell you about it. Or that you inherit a case where you think that this source has been vetted, but then you find out that there are other issues that haven't come to the forefront yet, and you've got to deal with those. So it's one of the things that makes intelligence work as exciting as it is, because you never know exactly what you're going to be dealing with.
How do you know you can trust your sources?
You have to look at it from the perspective of you possibly can't trust your sources. Trust is a commodity that is incredibly fragile in the intelligence world. It's not one of those things that you can look at and just say, well, maybe they weren't totally honest about this, but we can overlook that. You have to realize that the relationship that you have with sources is essentially a business relationship. They are providing you information, and you're providing them something in return. Sometimes that could be as simple as they're a patriotic individual and they want to ensure that Canada stays a safe country. But people, whether through omission or commission, lie. It happens. And you have to be, as an intelligence officer, aware of that fact. And there is a process called validation. And by validating the information that that source has provided you potentially with you've gotten from other sources, from what you have from open source information, from what you've shared with other intelligence agencies. This may help you validate the information that that source is providing you. But one of the main things to think about when it comes to understanding sources is their motivation. And motivations changed throughout the relationship of the source. You might have someone who's been a source for 15 minutes and you think you know exactly what their motivations are, but 4 months into the investigation, that motivation might have changed. And you have to be in a position where you can react to that change of motivation.
What's the most difficult thing you had to deal with in your time in the service?
I would say one of the most difficult things dealing with in the service is the fact that Canada has a lack of an intelligence mindset. Intelligence and national security is not a culture that's readily identifiable or acceptable in Canada. It's always more of an afterthought. Even as an intelligence officer going out to speak to people, a good majority of my time was trying to explain what the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service was all about and what their mandate was, because they'd never heard of it before. The unfortunate problem with that is it has a ripple effect throughout society in Canada. Because there is a very weak culture for national security and intelligence collection here in Canada, it never becomes an issue that's important to potentially constituents, the government, or even individuals that are in the political system trying to obtain votes. So because of that, when things need to be paid attention to, sometimes they aren't.